The world of Zelda is filled with all kinds of magic, but there's one of them that is very interesting. The fairies. Where do they come from? What are they? And what about those great fairies? This has never really been explained in the games. And I have an explanation for this that might actually surprise you. Fairies, small creatures with healing powers that usually fly by means of delicate insect-like wings. They usually have one of two roles in the Zelda games. Either possessing healing powers that can restore some of Link's health when he's wounded, or they are Link's traveling companion, for example, Navi.
Hello! Hey, listen!
And then of course we have the Great Fairies who can bless Link with new powers or give him special items. They seem to be some sort of holy and magical beings. So let's start with our first question. Where do they even come from? Let's first take a look at the place where we find them most of the times. The fairy fountains that are scattered all across the land. They are magical springs found across many places of Hyrule, which contain a small group of fairies within. You can find them in caves or by bombing certain walls to reveal the hidden entrance. We have seen them in almost every Zelda game to date, providing a good source of healing for Link in which you can recover his hearts at once, or store the fairies in empty bottles for later use. Now the thing that is interesting here is the fact that they are magical springs. Might it be that magic is the key? Well, for this we will take a look at an enemy that you can transform into a fairy in A Link to the Past. The Anti-Fairy. They appear as obstacle-like monsters that inhabit the dungeons in both the Light World and the Dark World. They resemble regular skulls with 4 fireballs orbiting around them. But the interesting part is, if Link manages to sprinkle them with magic powder, they are instantly transformed into fairies. So these anti-fairies transform into good fairies after they come in contact with magic powder? Might it be that if something comes into contact with magic, that it turns into a fairy? Good or evil? And this might depend on the person. Well, there's actually a small Easter egg that some sort of confirms this. If Link sprinkles magic powder on the sweeping lady in front of her house in A Link to the Past, she turns into a fairy. So this is an ordinary human who transforms into a fairy because of magic. So fairies exist because of magic. This would also fit with the fairy fountains, since these are essentially pools of pure magic. So, for example, if an ordinary human or other being would find a fairy fountain, they could possibly transform into a fairy, since they came into contact with a high amount of magic. And Link is the chosen hero, so he doesn't really have a chance of transforming into a fairy. He is stronger than an ordinary human. But does this also go for anti-fairies? Well, I think that it depends on the magic, since we almost always find anti-fairies in dungeons, which are essentially cursed places. And another clue for this is the fact that if you throw magic powder on an enemy, he will most likely burst into flames. So dark creatures can't absorb the holy magic and become fairies. They need dark magic in order to turn into their equivalent, anti-fairies. It's a clue that magic powder is some sort of holy magic. But with enemies like anti-fairies, they will absorb the holy magic and turn into good fairies. Since the holy magic probably takes over and defeats the dark magic, turning the anti-fairy into a normal fairy. The only thing that I can't explain are the sparks. They turn into fairies even when you throw a boomerang at them. And to be honest, I have no idea how that would work. But what about the fairies that we find in the forest, for example? Why did they turn into fairies? They never touched magic as far as we know. Well, there's one quite unknown and hidden way of becoming a fairy without magic powder or the fountains. In A Link to the Past, the magic mushroom can be found within the Lost Woods. Link can offer it to the witch in exchange for the magic powder. And this is how you could also turn into a fairy. For example, you're just wandering through the forest collecting mushrooms. You see a bit of a strange mushroom, but still take it with you and later on eat it. But all of a sudden you turn into a fairy, since this is not a normal mushroom, but a magical one. Now this could also happen to any other being, like a rabbit or a bird, since this mushroom is almost the same as magic powder. It's in the name after all, and also the main ingredient. So fairies most likely came from fairy fountains, other places filled with magic, or accidentally came into contact with magic, since this is needed to create one. But now for my second question. What are they made of? Are they made of pure magic and nothing else? Well, like I said before, there's a good and evil variant of the fairy. So you have one made of mostly dark magic and one mostly made of good magic. And there's actually one little detail in the game that shows off that they are probably made of pure magic and nothing else. Just look at what happens when Link is healed or revived by a fairy. As you can see, the fairy uses all of its magic to heal or revive Link, and after this, completely disappears. It could be that after a certain amount of time, the original creature was completely replaced by concentrated magic. But I think that it actually happens instantly, since we also see this with the lady from A Link to the Past. She instantly transforms into a fairy. This could also explain what happened to Navi at the end of Ocarina of Time, since some people have been theorizing that Navi was actually dying at the end of the game. And that's why she left all of a sudden. According to the theory, Link had been draining her magic, and just like all the other fairies would disappear. If this is true, then this would be another good clue for the fairies being made of pure magic. Now let's move on to the last question. What about the Great Fairies? How are they created, since they are way bigger, humanoid and more powerful? Their main purpose is to heal Link whenever he is wounded, and will also recover his magic power in games that incorporate a magic meter. In other titles such as Ocarina of Time and The Wind Waker, they also bless Link with new items, powers or upgrades of his existing equipment. The Great Fairies' appearance differ vastly between games, and most of them can be found living within a Great Fairy fountain. Well, if we take a look at the Great Fairies in Majora's Mask, then we can see what they are made of. Since the Great Fairies living within were shattered into stray fairies by the Skull Kid, wearing Majora's Mask. It is up to Link to gather the missing stray fairies from each of the dungeon's areas in order to receive the power-up from the Great Fairies. So in this game we can see that Great Fairies are made of a group of smaller fairies, all combining their power. And they even appear in multiple games: Majora's Mask, Oracle of Ages, Four Swords. However, these fairies are dissimilar to most other fairies, so they're probably a different kind. So we actually saw this in multiple games, giving us enough examples. But how can a Great Fairy give power and magic to Link and not disappear? Why doesn't she lose power? Well, this is because of the Great Fairy Fountain. This place has magical powers, so she can use that to help Link without dying. The fountain is filled with magical power ready to be used by the Great Fairy to aid others. But there's one interesting thing about all of this. If we look at the Great Fairy Fountains in Ocarina of Time, we can see that all of them are marked with a Triforce. Why? Are the goddesses also involved in all of this? Well, I'm almost 100% sure they are. Since the Great Fairies also give items to Link which are related to the gods, like Din's Fire, which is obtained from the Great Fairy of Magic near Hyrule Castle. So maybe the gods made the Great Fairy Fountains, and maybe they even work for the gods. But this all depends on one fairy. The leader of all. The Fairy Queen. The one that rules over all the other fairies in the Legend of Zelda series. They are known to be much more powerful than the Great Fairies, and as such, they can empower Link with abilities that no Great Fairy can bestow upon the young hero. Now, she is very powerful, and since the Great Fairies already show signs of working together with the gods, I think that this is also the case with the Fairy Queen. And this would also explain where she got all her power from, since the gods are even more powerful than her. But the question is, which gods created the Fairy Queen and the Fairy Fountains? Was it Hylia or the three golden goddesses? Well, Hylia was given the task to protect the Triforce, and she eventually chose a hero to defeat Demise, and left multiple messages to aid him, as well as Vi to guide him. And the Great Fairies are known for helping out Link, the chosen hero, in his quest to stop Ganondorf. So maybe Hylia created the Fairy Fountains, Fairy Queen and magic to help the hero in his quest. They give him all kinds of items and power-ups for no reason after all, and in Ocarina of Time you need to play Zelda's Lullaby to summon them. And Zelda's the human reincarnation of Hylia, so maybe it was planned that the chosen hero would learn the song from her. She appointed the queen as the leader, guiding all other fairies in the land. Well, the Great Fairies at least. So now we know how fairies were created, where they came from, and the function of the Great Fairies and Fairy Queen, and the person who started it all. But this is only a theory, of course. So tell me what you think in the comments, I'm curious. Also, thanks to Kami Kitty for suggesting this theory subject. Well, hello there, welcome to the end screen! I heard that if you click that subscribe button, you won't miss any videos anymore, so might want to try that. Or you could click that other video for more shit, because this one is over. You could click there for more.